In the previous video, Suho and Seo-jun, despite not having their friendship together, go together to save the protagonist from the hands of bandits. At the place, they come across a surprise from Soo-jin, Soo-ah, and her boyfriend. However, everything ends well. In the next scene, we see a baseball player who is the best on his team. His name is Hyung-jin. The man is focused on the game and hitting pitches when he gets a strike in his heart when he sees a beautiful girl in the stands. The next day at school, the teacher is wondering why Hee-kyung didn't call him after their kiss. Meanwhile, some kids who are always kept in trouble are in the principal's office being reprimanded because the karaoke owner called the school to report the fight he had on the premises with some of their students. Then the real participants in the fight arrive, and in the middle of the confusion, a delivery man appears to deliver the flowers to the teacher, sent by Hee-kyung. The man gets nervous and sends all the students to the detention room. The professor calls his admirer, and the woman tells him the meaning of the flowers, which is, "I will do my best for you." The woman confesses that this is what she intends to do for her beloved. Hee-kyung asks him to think about her every time he looks at the flowers and tells him that she is going on a trip, so she will be away for a while. In the bathroom, Seo-jun talks to Suho and says that he should be grateful for what his former friend did to help his mother, but asks that from that moment on, he stay out of his affairs. Suho approaches the boy and puts his head on his shoulder. When Seo-jun questions what he's doing, Suho just says that she ended up falling asleep while he was talking. When he leaves the bathroom, Seo-jun can't stop thinking about the protagonist. He is really falling in love with her. At the bus stop, upon seeing Suho, Ju-kyung remembers when they were coming back after the fight in the taxi, and she was scared thinking about the things that happened when she was alone with those boys, and Suho took her hand to calm down. Returning to the present day, the protagonist asks if he wants to go to the comic book store with her later. However, the boy denies it, and when he is in the car, he tells her to meet him at the cafe the next day to study together, since he paid attention when the girl and her family were saying she needed to improve her grades. In the cafeteria, while they are studying, Suah invites the protagonist to go to another baseball game with her, and Ju-kyung accepts. It turns out that her friend is in love with a player on the team called Hyung-jin, the same one we saw previously. However, he asks her not to talk to her boyfriend. After studying, that boy who had picked up the protagonist to ask Seo-jun at karaoke appears, and he goes to apologize to the girl. However, before he could complete the sentence, Ju-kyung takes a spray and throws it in his eyes to protect himself. Thinking he would do something else. As soon as the boy comes out near them, he finds Suho and makes sure he sees him. It turns out that he kept pressuring the boy to do this. It was at his school, at the internet cafe, and even at the butcher's. Soo-jin and Ju-kyung decide to drink a little later and eat something together. The protagonist notices that her friend's hands are much drier, and she says it's because of her habit of washing a lot when she's stressed. Soo-jin confesses that it's related to her grades, but asks Ju-kyung not to tell anyone, as she's the only one who knows. The next day, the protagonist is confident that she will do well in the test, as she worked hard and studied hard for it. At the baseball game, the girls are surprised when Suho and Taehoon show up. Sua's boyfriend is upset that she lied about being at her grandmother's birthday, but it soon passes. However, the two find it strange that Suho is with him, as she has always dodged the boy's invitations, and he says that the two are now good friends. After the game, Hyung-jin goes to where the girls are and tells Ju-kyung that he has been looking for her since the last time he saw her. He fell in love with her, who was in the stands. The boy asks for the protagonist's number, and when Suho realizes that she added him to her contacts, he lectures her, saying that Hyung-jin could be a bad person and that she should be more careful. Suho leaves for a place to de-stress, and Taehoon follows him. The boy says he knows he likes Ju-kyung and gives him some tips on how to tell the girl. Meanwhile, the protagonist ends up having a hasty meeting with the player, thanks to Suah. The next day, the professor remembers the dinner he had with Hee-kyung, and the man told her that he didn't want to date at the moment. He makes an analogy to shoes, saying that he only buys a shoe after analyzing it from all angles. However, as he doesn't want a new one now, he ends up not even going into shoe stores. The protagonist's brother found Go-woon beautiful at the performance, and upon hearing her sing again, he entered the room to pay her a compliment, which came out more like an insult, and the girl left the room. Ju-kyung's grades weren't as good as she expected, and the girl knows that as soon as her mom finds out, she's going to be screwed. Soo-jin ended up falling from his position and moving to 4th place. Hyung-jin surprises the protagonist and appears at her school. The boy gives her his lucky baseball and says that this way she will need to appear in the next game so that when Hyung-jin wins, he can ask her out. Seo-jun approaches the two and says that she thought the girl was dating him until then and that taking someone else in front of him is showing that she has no respect for her ex. Hyun-jin runs out after a teacher arrives, and Ju-kyung goes after him. On the way, she stops and listens to Suho's conversation with a girl who declared herself to him. However, the boy says he likes someone else at the moment. When she gets home, the protagonist discovers that her mother was so angry about her grades that she threw all of the girl's makeup in the trash. Ju-kyung then goes to her mother and starts crying, saying that she really tried hard to improve her grades and that the woman never paid attention to her, which is why she never told her about what happened at her last school and ran outside to retrieve her belongings. Suho is in front of the protagonist's house, as he was ready to confess his feelings for her, but when he sees her crying, he decides it's not the best time. The two go to the comic book store, and there the girl vents. Suho then puts his hand on her head and says that she was incredible, that he knows how much she studied, and that Ju-kyung's ranking went up by 20. He finds himself proud. Meanwhile, the protagonist's mother wonders at home about what happened to her daughter at her old school, and when her husband suggests that it was because she was a little ugly, the woman doesn't believe that could be the case. The boy takes Ju-kyung home, and there he approaches her very close and gives her a hair clip as a gift, then he says goodbye. We see in the next scene Soo-jin with a bruised face. Her father did this after finding out that she dropped out of the top 10 students. Suho is waiting to give the class schedule when Soo-jin ends up entering the place, and upon seeing him, she runs out. The boy follows her and asks if it was her father who did this to her again, and Soo-jin starts to vent. In the end, her friend hugs her to console her, and when Ju-kyung sees the two of them, she starts to believe that he likes her friend. In the living room, Soo-jin apologizes to her friend for some things she said, and he says that if you need anything, just call him. The girl then says that Suho should only think of her as a friend. However, the boy confirms that she thinks of her as a friend, nothing more. When Ju-kyung enters the classroom and sees Soo-jin with the cap, he decides to sit in the back seats instead of the one Suho had set aside for her. Meanwhile, Hee-kyung, upon arriving from a business trip, goes straight to the professor's house and calls him to let him know that he is outside, so the lovebirds go upstairs to have some fun. Seo-jun asks the protagonist for help buying a birthday present for her sister. At the scene, she receives a call from Suho asking where she is, and when she hears Seo-jun's voice in the background, it makes her heart melt. Suho ends up appearing at the scene, and when he finds Ju-kyung, he starts to pull her out of the elevator. However, it turns out that Seo-jun holds her, so the girl is almost crushed by the elevator. In the end, Suho enters, and they press the buttons so much that the elevator breaks down with the three of them inside. Before the event, the protagonist had a huge drink and started to feel like going to the bathroom, as the doors were locked. Suho suggested she do it in the cup. But with luck, the doors are soon opened, and she manages to run to the bathroom. Then, when she goes out into the street, it is snowing, and the player appears to be covering her with his umbrella. Ju-kyung thinks the time has come to be honest with the boy and tells him that she likes someone else, so she will return his lucky ball and not go to the game. On the day of the game, Suho and Seo-jun show up to watch, and when they hear that if Hyung-jin wins the game, he will be taken to play in the USA, the boys start cheering for the player and celebrate by hugging each other every time. Point he makes. Once it's over, Suho checks whether Seo-jun just came to see the game and discovers that her old friend is also liking the protagonist. After this discovery, Suho decides that she must confess her love to the protagonist soon, and to do so, she buys a necklace as a gift to give right away. Ju-kyung will go on a trip with her class and Hee-kyung, who takes her with the hope of seeing her beloved. And successfully, the woman spots Junwoo. The two go to hug. However, as no one knows about their relationship and Ju-kyung goes back to get his cell phone that he forgot in the car, they are forced to disguise themselves. We now see a little more about the professor's life. He tells his crush that he is in a lot of debt at the moment, having taken out a student loan, which is why he didn't want to date anyone at the moment. But our beautiful Hee-kyung doesn't care about that and even gave a gift to her lover. He needed new shoes, and that's what she bought for him on the trip. The woman says she will be good to the teacher and asks him to stay with her. Returning to the protagonist, Suho invites her to sit next to her on the bus. However, Soo-jin gets in front of her and sits down. So Seo-jun gets the opportunity to sit next to the girl, and of course he takes advantage. In the tent, the girls comment on what Suho had said to that girl, that he liked someone else. Suah talks about the possibility of being Soo-jin, and the girl neither denies nor affirms. Ju-kyung's colleagues pick on her because she and Seo-jun are wearing matching t-shirts, and everyone comments that they could be a possible couple. And of course, Seo-jun joins the crowd. Whoever manages the place gives information to the kids who want to explore the forest. The man tells a legend that a very ugly woman has lived near the well for years. Over time, she ended up without a face, and that's why she walks around at night looking for beautiful people to steal your face. Meanwhile, Hee-kyung works on Se-yeon's memorial project. In the previous days, she met with Seo-jun because she believes he is the Leo who helped compose the songs. However, the boy is unhappy with the company after what they did to your friend and doesn't want to participate in anything she's involved in. Later, the woman ends up meeting her boss before going home and comments about thinking it would be a good idea to use Seo-jun in the boy's honor, and that's why she will continue trying to contact him. However, when the man is only with his assistant, she asks him to find a way so that the tribute doesn't happen. Returning to the protagonist, Suho takes her to ride a boat on the lake, and to create a more relaxing atmosphere, he plays a song by Se-yeon that has never been released. Later, when Ju-kyung goes to take a photo of the two of them, Suho doesn't feel comfortable with the camera and explains that it's because he's had to deal with his father's paparazzi since he was very young. But how does he know that the girl likes a little selfie? He was willing to take one with her. However, when they are taking the photo, an insect flies into the protagonist's face, and in her desperation to get it out, she ends up falling out of the boat and ending up in the lake. Afterwards, Suho and Ju-kyung get soaked, and so that Soo-jin doesn't see her without makeup, the boy distracts her, so the protagonist remains hidden inside the forest and ends up scaring her colleagues because they think it was that woman's spirit from the pit that stole faces. The next day at work, Hee-kyung discovered that she was the only one on her team who was transferred to another department, and her colleague asks if she didn't do something to irritate her boss to make this happen. However, the woman asserts herself and says that they can't do it. This without prior notice. Meanwhile, the protagonist does not participate in the treasure hunt because she is not feeling well and ends up on the bus to rest. Seo-jun watches the moment she leaves and goes after her to see if the girl is okay. He notices that Ju-kyung has a fever and ends up giving her medicine and staying with her while she sleeps. He even gives her an improvised bracelet. Suho realizes that the two are alone on the bus and goes after him to find out what happened. In the end, the two end up fighting as always. In the protagonist's mother's salon, a client is angry, and when she goes to throw a glass of water at the woman, her husband arrives and protects her, then asks the client to leave. And when the woman arrives home at night, she receives a candlelit dinner prepared by her husband. The two enjoy a beautiful night. In order not to disturb his parents, Ju-young goes to the comic book store, and there he ends up meeting Go-woon. The boy makes a comment trying to be funny about her following him, but Go-woon doesn't think it's funny at all. Returning to the protagonist, there is a show at the school camp, and Seo-jun is called to sing because he is a student who received K-pop training. However, the boy only agrees to go on stage when Ju-kyung promises him to make a wish come true. In the middle of the song, the protagonist comes out to see Soo-jin all happy next to Soo-ho wearing the boy's cap, and Tae-hoon later catches up with her and says that Soo-ho is waiting for the girl to take his coat. Then the boy goes to Soo-ho and says that it is the right time for him to declare himself and that Ju-kyung is waiting for him. However, when she arrives at the place, it's Soo-jin, and Soo-ho doesn't understand. It turns out that on the way the protagonist met her friend and she offered to give her the coat, as the girl thought that Soo-ho liked Soo-jin just handed it over. Seo-jun ends up finding Ju-kyung to ask her about her desire, and she is crying. The boy tries to calm her down even after knowing that the reason is that Soo-ho doesn't like her like she likes him. Soo-ho runs out to find the protagonist and catches her with Seo-jun wiping her tears, and then the girl runs away. Her makeup ended up coming off while she was crying, and before she could put the products on her face again, her colleagues reappear, and to hide her ugliness, Soo-ho helps her. The two are hiding behind a rock when the boy decides to confess to her, and the couple's first kiss takes place. What did you think of these episodes? I hope you enjoyed the summary. Leave your suggestions in the comments and subscribe. If you liked the video, like and share to help me. Until next time.